Catherine. First of all, I'm trying a new thing with the camera, so you can see like a little bit more of my room. You can see that that's the Totoro pillow that I normally have sitting behind my neck when I'm recording. Um, Also, I know my voice sounds a little bit gross right now. I have like a little bit of a head cold. It really, like, I had a horrible sore throat that hurt for like the first 2 days, but then that went away. And so now I just have this, like, it doesn't hurt. I feel totally fine. I just sound pretty gross. So right now, I record on the iPad, and it's sitting on my desk, and I have a desk lamp right above me, right there. So I think I'm a little bit better lit than I normally am, and more kind of stationary in place with more to look at and less of me having to hold the camera, so I can be a little bit more free flowing in how I speak. I don't know. Trying new things. So today is December 1st. It's the first day of the last month of 2019. It's the first day of my last month in Edinburgh, and it is the first day of the last month of the decade of the 2010s. And that's just kind of wild to think about for me because it's so much all happening and ending at the same time. It feels like a really big moment, like there has to be some kind of change or that something new is right around the corner, and yet at the same time, it's all just numbers to an extent. It's had me thinking quite a bit. So, my mom always said that she was like an 80s kid, or that's how she described herself. But she is born in the year 1969. So that always perplexed me because she was neither born in the 70s nor the 80s. So how could she be an 80s kid? But since we're 30 years separated from each other, I can start to draw parallels between her experience and mine. Meaning, in the year 1980, my mother would have been the same age I was in 2010. 30 years removed. So that means my mom was 11 then, just as I was 11 in 2010. And so even though she wasn't born in the 80s, those were her formative years. Those were the years between when she was 11 and 20. And now that I think about that in terms of this decade and in terms of the 80s for her, it makes me wonder if this is going to be the decade that I miss the most when I'm older, or that I'm the most nostalgic for. Because, I mean, if I'm being realistic, even now I have a hard time remembering things that happened before, like, 2010. I mean, I obviously have memories there, but they're much less clear. They're much more sparse. They're not as, defined and linear. But from when I was 11 on, basically that's 5th grade through my junior year of college. So that's all of my teenage years. That's most of my preteen years. I don't really know how to count those, if I'm being honest. Do they start at 9 or 12 or 10? It's also the start of my 20s, so a start of the third decade of my life. And just really, if my life were a coming of age movie, that decade, the 2010s, would be the one during which I think I did the most growing up. That's not to say I don't still have a lot of growing to do or a lot more to figure out in the decades that come, but it is to say that I understand now much more why she identifies with being an 80s kid and what that's going to mean for me going forward. Oh, and a quick epilogue for anyone astute enough to notice. Yes, this video is one day late, but I did attain permission for that in advance because I had Thanksgiving and then one day in between and then St. Andrew's Day, and then that Saturday. And so I was in super holiday mashup mode, getting ready to start the next month, and I had a billion things to get done and couldn't put it all together. A lot happened in my life. I won't get into it, but it was just a crazy time because it felt like in the spans of like 4 days, I lived like 2 weeks worth of content. So I had like a bunch of small clips, but it almost doesn't feel like it makes sense to add them now because it feels so long ago, even though it was just in the last couple of days. Wild. So, peace for real this time.